Okay, everybody, this is Joseph P. Farrell. This is Thursday, 2004, February 6th, 2004, in the year beyond Thunderdome. I have a short news and views today, and then a little bit of a sad thing I want to do. But we'll get to that after we get to the news and views. I have two articles here on the banking thing, and most of you have been bombarding me with articles about what's going on in banking. And there's two stories that I find rather peculiar and I suspect strongly are related. One is a story that appeared on Zero Hedge from our friend Tyler Durden, as he likes to call himself, and this is about the interestingly named warehouse fire in Argentina that apparently destroyed system records for the Argentine banking system. All right. Now, this warehouse is called Iron Mountain, which, for those of you who live in the United States, that'll ring a bell because, of course, it was the report from Iron Mountain that was a fictitious report. I talked about it in Covert Wars and Clash of Civilizations that was drawn up by the power elite, supposedly. Again, and this was a hoax to figure out what to do if all of a sudden they were faced not with a wartime economy, but a peacetime economy. And interestingly enough, they came up with the idea that we'd have to have a great big huge space program. But anyway, let me talk about this Argentine Iron Mountain warehouse. And this is from Tyler Durden's own website, Zero Hedge, and I'll put the links up here on YouTube. He says this, and you can kind of hear from the paragraph following the tongue-in-cheek nature of his remarks. Quote, "While we are sure it is a very sad coincidence, on the day when Argentina decrees limits on the positions banks can hold and the Argentine Central Bank's reserves accounting is questioned politically, a massive fire killing 9 people has destroyed a warehouse archiving banking system documents. As the Washington Post reports, the fire at the Iron Mountain warehouse, which purportedly had multiple protections against fire, including advanced systems that can detect and quench flames without damaging important documents, took hours to control, and the sprawling building appeared to be ruined. The cause of the fire wasn't immediately clear, though we suggest smelling Ferdinand's hands. We noted yesterday that there are major questions over Argentina's reserve honesty. In other words, the amount that they're required by law in Argentina to hold in reserve. Apparently, Argentina's been playing fast and loose, or turning a blind eye to bankers who are playing fast and loose with their reserve requirements. While the first print is preliminary and subject to revision, the size of recent discrepancies have no precedent. In other words, what he's suggesting is the Argentine banks are low, very low, on their reserves. This suggests that the government may be attempting to manage expectations by temporarily fudging the estimate of reserve numbers. During a balance of payments crisis, as Argentina is undergoing, such manipulation of official statistics and one so critical for market sentiment is detrimental to the needed confidence building around the transition. All right. Now, what he's saying there is, in other words, that because Argentina cannot make its balance of payments, what they've done is they've dipped into the reserves in their banking system and used those to meet their payments. So, in other words, something is happening, and the records of what is happening have been destroyed. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't call that coincidental. So now another article appeared, and I suspect this has a great deal to do with what we're seeing going on, and I suspect it has a great deal to do with that scenario of retrenchment that former Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Catherine Austin Fitts and I have been talking about, kicking around, playing with over the past few months. But first, the article. The article says, quote, Are we on the verge of a massive emerging markets currency collapse? And I want you to pay attention to the first three paragraphs here. Quote, pardon me. This time, the Federal Reserve has created a truly global problem. A big chunk of the trillions of dollars that it has pumped into the financial system over the past several years has flowed into emerging markets. In other words, countries like Argentina, countries like Brazil, like Chile, like Indonesia. But now that the Fed has decided to begin the taper, investors see it as a sign to pull the hot money out of the emerging markets as Turkey, South Africa, Ukraine, Chile, Indonesia, Venezuela, India, Brazil, Taiwan, and Malaysia are just some of the emerging markets that have been hit so far. Now let me stop and point out that in that statement you'll notice a heavy presence of BRICS nations. So in other words, we have the prospect that we might be looking at some sort of economic warfare. In fact, last week, emerging market currencies experienced the biggest decline that we have seen since the financial crisis of 2008. And all of this chaos in emerging markets is seriously spooking Wall Street as well. The Dow has fallen nearly 500 points over the last two trading sessions alone. And incidentally, this article is dated January 26th, so it's already about a week to 2 weeks old, and we've seen a recent dip in the Japanese stock markets as well. If the Federal Reserve opts to taper even more in the coming days, this currency crisis could rapidly turn into a complete and total currency collapse. A lot of Americans have always assumed that the U.S. dollar would be the first currency to collapse when the next great financial crisis happens. But actually, right now, just the opposite is happening. It is causing chaos all over the planet. For instance, just check out what is happening in Turkey. Now, let me stop there, because what this article also states is that the cash that was pumped into those emerging economies due to the quantitative easing by the Federal Reserve is now being sucked out. All right. Now that's key, because we believe Secretary Fitz and I and a few others, as we've been kicking around this retrenchment scenario, that they are awash with money in these large corporations and banks. And we suspect that this is a deliberate pulling of the plug on the second world, on the emerging economies, and a retrenchment into North America. Now, one thing to note, Secretary Fitz is not predicting any sort of crisis or collapse. She's continuing to predict kind of a slow burn, all right, as they're transitioning into a new type of economy in North America and Europe. That really is how she sees things, and I tend to see things too. But I don't think the Argentine banking warehouse fire is at all coincidental. The first thing that's going to happen in a situation like that is they're going to destroy records. That's why it's important, folks. You know, I rarely give financial advice, and I'm really not doing so now. I'm just trying to caution you, keep paper records of your bank transactions. Don't rely on all of this digital nonsense that they're trying to shove down everybody's throat, including Bitcoin, but that's another subject for another news and views. Anyway, I want to end this by a little tribute to someone that our family lost recently. Last night, my sister Jackie told me that her husband, Everett Comstock Jr., passed away at about 10 o'clock Eastern Time in the United States. And Ev, we're going to miss you. It's difficult for me, being so far from the family, to say what he meant. But Jackie and Ev, you were there for me in a very, very difficult time in my life after Mom had passed. So know that you're in my thoughts and prayers, and God bless. And God bless all the rest of you folks, and we'll see you on the flip side.